All sorts of things that, when you leave a particular branch, it just comes forward. For example, after 2 years, you're going to have a car, you're going to have a very beautiful job, but in medicine, you're going to start from the base route and you're going to go up to 5 years, and then we don't even know whether you will be able to complete it. I think the negative point would be the work-life balance, I would say. The enormous number of hours that you work through without sleeping, constantly working, juggling your life, your work is horrendous. In the top 3 rank out of 180 students that we were in a batch to ensure that I keep my scholarship every year. That was something which I feel is very close to my heart, which I did, but there were failures in between it and a lot of people are unaware of it. Certainty is just the enemy of your growth. And nothing is for sure certain until unless it has happened, and I feel it is still debatable. Even if it has happened, you cannot be certain that it has actually happened. That's a very good question. So he was a physics professor, so he had got that modern outlook that engineering is not the end of the world. The quota system that works in India is pretty difficult. This is something which I definitely want to try so that I don't regret for the rest of my life that I didn't even give it a chance to try.
What exactly is this video podcast about, you might ask? As the saying goes, no two journeys are the same. With that thought, I present to you Mapped Out With Monisha. In the very first season, we will be chatting with some very exciting guests from various professional backgrounds who made the difficult decision of moving away from their homeland. We shall be navigating through various chapters of their lives and discuss in depth about why they decided to relocate, their victories, failures, roadblocks, life outside of being a full-time working professional, what their future plans are, and in true Bollywood style, a surprise rapid fire towards the end of the episode. With some life experience of moving outside of my native country, I am your host, Dr. Monisha Mishra, an international medical graduate from India, currently pursuing psychiatry residency in London. This podcast was created to have a safe space to figure out who we are, what we want to be, and most importantly, where do we see ourselves pursuing these dreams. So sit back and relax, grab a cuppa, and enjoy this spirited ride of moving countries one guest at a time. In today's episode, we have with us Dr. Shawn Gaurav. He's a medical graduate from India who aspired to be a surgeon when he was very young. And he recently matched into surgery residency in the UK, which he will be starting in a few days' time. What many of us do not know about Shawn is that he was initially pursuing engineering and would have gone on to become an engineer working for maybe Google or Facebook one day. In this episode, we talk about his brave decision to switch careers in a rigid Indian society, his one true undeterred passion for medicine, the very wise advice given to him by his engineering professor, and of course, the challenges of being a first-generation immigrant. Shawn talks about mapping out his move from one continent to another. We discuss in detail his setbacks, his victories, how the pandemic put a pause on his pathway, application process for surgery training in the UK, his interests outside of his 9-to-5 job, what's next in store for him, and he very fondly talks about his first of his many brainchilds, PLAB Nation, which he then sold to the very famous PLABable. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mapped Out with Monisha. Today we've got the ever so amazing Dr. Shawn Gaurav. For those of you who do not know him, Shawn is a medical graduate born and raised in India. He aspires to be a surgeon and has recently matched into surgery residency starting in August 2022. Pluviophile by nature, he describes himself as a traveler, enthusiast, and a person with vision to implement change. Welcome to today's episode, Shawn.
Thanks, Monisha. Thank you for having me here.
I've been actually waiting for so long to reach out to you because I haven't yet come across someone who's an IMG and is pursuing surgery. So the moment I came across your Instagram page, I was so excited and I just knew that I had to reach out to you for this episode. So thank you for making the time.
No, it's my pleasure to be here, actually, honestly. But it's pretty strange that you have never come across an IMG into surgical training.
Yeah, I don't know how and why. And I don't know if surgery IMGs are quite rare to find or they're so busy that I haven't seen anyone on social media. I don't know what it is.
Right. I think there are quite a lot of people that I know who are from IMGs, not only from India, but from various other countries who have matched into core surgical training or ST3 training. So yeah, there are quite a few, but maybe that you have just not come across them.
Yeah, maybe it's me. I'm going to put the blame on me. But before we go into surgical training and everything else surrounding that, something that really pleasantly surprised me about your journey is that you were actually pursuing engineering. You were going to become an engineer. And then you made the switch to pursue MBBS to become a doctor. How and why did that switch happen?
So it was like back in 2010, I had actually both maths and biology as my subject in 12th standard. Although I always wanted to pursue medicine and I really wanted to get into army, the AFMC college, which is there in India. Due to that, I tried twice and I could not because of a defect in the eye that I sustained. It was during my 12th while I was playing a state level cricket and the ball hit me and now my pupil doesn't constrict. This is one of those facts and because of which I was unable to get into medical training at that point of time. So I had to choose something. I could not just leave. So while I joined engineering in the first place, for 2 years, I continued giving again AFMC twice to see if they would, still make an exception or they would do something regarding it. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. And then I just decided that I just need to leave engineering and just try to do what I want to do in future. Nothing bad against engineering. It's a beautiful branch, I would say. And if I was in engineering or still doing engineering, I would have definitely aimed to go into Google, Facebook, something like brand stuff. But I guess engineering is just one of those jobs, either you love it or you completely hate it. And medicine is something very close to me. It has got a very background about my grandmother from where I inspired to become a doctor. And a very famous surgeon actually in Orissa, a neurology surgeon, Sanathan Rath. He's no more with us, but he's one of my inspiration who actually looked after my grandmother. Just being a doctor is something really amazing, being a provider, caring for other people, teaching, service, a thorough learning again and again. You never stop learning. And I think this is something which I would enjoy rather than sitting in a cubicle and doing the same gig again and again and again.
You then decided to pursue MBBS outside of India, which had a very interesting layout wherein a part of it was in Beijing and the rest of it, the research side of it, was in India. So how and why did you make the decision to move out of India to pursue MBBS?
So I just did not want to waste a lot of time in India, just looking to go into what I was very stubborn about, AFMC. Also, the other medical colleges that I got into were private, and I did not want to pay such a large sum of money to get into those private medical colleges. So I just thought that it's going to be me, whether I study in India or abroad, it's going to be me who's going to study medicine. So it's not going to make a difference if I'm committed enough wherever I study. So I chose which was very, very near to my place, where I can come back and see my grandparents, where I can come back and see my sister, and I don't have to be very far away from them. And also something regarding the tropical medicine in China is something similar to India, rather than going to European countries, which is like completely different. Like PLAB is completely different. UK system is completely different. They hardly ask questions on TV, but we read TV like every single day and we see TV every single day. So given that aspect as well, I chose that China would be a better factor. I think it was one of those things where I was earlier trying to go into Germany, and my grandfather actually spoke me out of it because he said, are you going to Germany to work or you're going to Germany to study and then decide what you're going to do? So then I switched over from Germany. Then I was like, fine, I researched a lot, and then I was like, fine, doesn't matter. I'm going to go to China and then I'm going to see where I can look into and move out from there abroad, anywhere else.
I'm just going to take a few steps back. I remember you saying that you was quite stubborn to basically pursue MBBS in AFMC. Where did that stubbornness come from, and why did you just want to get into AFMC and no other medical college?
I think serving the army was something which I was looking forward to from a very young age. One of my uncles was an army major, and his personality and the way he always dressed himself actually attracted me the most. The service that you give to a country without looking backwards and without thinking about yourself first. Of course, the doctors also do the same thing. But being at the forefront, being a doctor and doing both the service together is something which I always wanted to do. Still speak this to my friends regarding that if I get an opportunity, maybe I'll join some other army rather than continuing myself completely into medicine. But let's see where the future takes.
Now, going to your MBBS in Beijing, you said that a part of it was also wherein you did your research side of it in India. So what did that kind of involve? What sort of research were you involved in while you were pursuing MBBS? Because this is such an interesting, for the lack of better word, concept or a good combination to have where you're doing MBBS and you're also getting an opportunity to do research, which we don't get so much back home in India. Like, I did not know what research or audits or things were when I was doing MBBS in India. That's something I only got to know when I was pursuing my internship probably. So tell us more about that.
So it all started when I met one of my professors in India, and Dr. Hari, and he was the one who actually pushed me into a lot of various aspects of thorough reading, understanding the concepts much more better than what you just read in one textbook, going out of the box and exploring the subject more. And he was the one who actually pushed me into research. While we were in China, we did publish a completely new journal from the society that I formed with the help of Dr. Hari. That journal had quite a lot of articles into it, from which one of the articles I took and I spoke with one of the genetics teacher there. And she was like, we have a student exchange program with one of the medical colleges in India. So why don't you do one thing? You propose this, and I'm gonna ask the fraternity about if they are able to fund you regarding this research project, and the doctors who are readily available in India, and if they are ready to help you with this project. So it just started with this way, and I was very interested in epigenetics at that time. So proposed that, was sent over to India, and they accepted it. When I came back to India and when I was working in the hospital, at that moment of time I was also working in the epigenetics sector, so as a research.
Post your MBBS, you decided to again move out of India and move to the UK. We'll get to the part why UK, but why again did you decide to move out of India post your MBBS, and why did you not pursue your PG in India?
I did give one attempt in PG. One of the fail-sake of not giving the second attempt was I wasn't really prepared because I was juggling between research and I was also juggling between my work. So I just gave the examination for the sake purpose of giving it, but I still got 590 marks, which was equivalent at that time, I think 16,000 rank. But since I had my MBBS degree from abroad, I did not had any state quota. I did not had any quota. So I was only in general quota. I was in general, the quota system that works in India is pretty difficult. So I did not had any state quota as such. When I saw people 25,000 getting Ramaiah Medical College in Bangalore, general surgery, I was frustrated to hell. I was like, this is some system that I cannot overcome ever. So I don't want to still keep spending my years, because I've already lost 2 years in engineering, and I didn't want to keep pursuing something which I know might not be possible in India.
So now Shawn is looking on the outside, and you've got like USA, you've got Canada, you've got Europe, you've got Australia, Middle East, UK. So why did you decide to move to the UK out of all the available options?
Actually, it's pretty interesting. I never wanted to come to UK.
Okay, wow. All right.
So it happened that the research actually started because I wanted to go to US, and I knew that US would require research projects so that you can match into a better residency program like general surgery or other surgery branches. So that's how it started actually. When after I felt that it requires a lot of funding before you even enter into your residency, and I just did not want to have that backup from home, and I wanted to be self-sufficient at that time. I thought this is one pathway that I can take, get into my faiths, know that I can have some balance, and if I still want to pursue further to the US, I still have my balance so that I can go forward. So I didn't want to put any pressure on my parents, because moving from engineering after 2 years was a very difficult time at home. Yeah, like it was a very difficult time, and I had to give them very good reason why I had to leave engineering, because although I was preparing for medicine at that time for the entrance examination, I still scored the first highest in computer science engineering. So they were like, even after you are not paying much attention and you're still getting the highest CGPA, what is the purpose of moving and leaving engineering? All sorts of things that, when you leave a particular branch, it just comes forward. For example, after 2 years, you're going to have a car, car, you're going to have a very beautiful job, but in medicine, you're going to start from the base route and you're going to go up to 5 years, and then we don't even know whether you'll be able to complete it, and all sorts of stigma attached to it. But then I still felt that what the worst that could happen? I would do this and I will fail in a few years, and at the end I will have to go back and get a job anyway. So have I really lost anything? And I was like, no, I could anyways get a job going back. But this is something which I definitely want to try so that I don't regret for the rest of my life that I didn't even give it a chance to try.
That's a good argument to have, actually, and a very wise decision, but it does take a lot of courage, especially if you're doing so well in the option B part of it.
I know. Yeah.
Right? It must be a tough choice, and to have this conversation not just with family but with yourself, and to sort of convince yourself, that must have been definitely so hard to go through.
It was. Honestly, family did support at the very end, and it was my grandparents who really supported me. But it was my professor in college who supported me a lot. So he was a physics professor, and he had done all his studies from France. So he had got that modern outlook that engineering is not the end of the world. Medicine is not the end of the world. You can just pursue whatever you want to. Since he was from France, he was very much into arts. So he always used to draw in the class. He had got a very good handwriting, very mesmerizing character, I would say. So he supported me a lot. Even though I never used to go to practical, he always used to give me marks. He always used to give me attendance. So he supported me a lot in this gig. At the end of 2 years, when I was actually leaving engineering, he was the one who told me that, do not worry, I'm going to see you in France someday. He always had that, he always had my back. He always had that confidence that if I really want to do it, I'll get it done. That gave me a lot of courage to move from engineering and then, give a phone call out of a blue to my father saying that, okay, I want to stop doing engineering and I'm going to move into medicine. Of course, it's, the heated arguments and stuff, but here I am.
But that's so much faith to have, in your student as a professor, and also that's some sort of confidence you need. You always need that one person who is without a doubt is going to support you no matter what decision you make. So yeah, that's amazing. So Shawn, you've now decided to move out of India and you've made the decision to move to UK. And then there are so many pathways to get into the system as a doctor in the UK. It's not like USA where it's just one exam, USMLE, and you match and you start your residency. It can be so overwhelming and complicated, especially when you make the decision to move to the UK. I still don't know so many of the pathways when people ask me questions. So how did you set your mind to pursue PLAB Pathway out of all the options?
See, since I had already prepared for USMLE and I thought that PLAB would be an easy pathway to go through because the first part is an MCQ test, which I knew wasn't that difficult in comparison to USMLE. And the second part was an OSCE examination, which in my college, we had done OSCE examinations before. So we had seen mannequins before, we had performed CPRs on mannequins. So I knew that it's not going to be very much difficult, but of course I just needed to get myself oriented to how NHS works. And I think that would be it. I thought given the timeline, if I had to pursue MRCS, it would have gone for a very long period of time. And again, the funds would have again mattered. So I was like, let's stick to PLAB. Easy, 2 pathways, not much of financial issues. Get it done. And then you can be starting to earn very quickly.
I remember you said that you were contemplating on pursuing surgery when you were giving All India PG, and you were upset that someone who scored so-and-so rank was being offered a surgery training or surgery residency or PG in India while you weren't. So there was a thought of surgery as a specialty, as a long-term career in your mind. So when did that thought come into, and when did you decide you wanted to pursue surgery training in the UK?
Right from the very beginning. Like, as I said, I drew my inspiration from the very famous Dr. Sanathan Rath, who was a neurosurgeon based in Odisha. I don't really know exactly what my grandmother had because at a very young age, she had some issues. The only thing that I can recall is that she had some nerve compression and her fingers were actually not working. The motor function of the fingers had actually lost. She went to all the big hospitals in India, AIMS, CMC, Velo, Chandigarh, Apollo, and all of the hospitals. Everybody said that she would require surgery in order to treat it. And the mortality rate of that was more than 75 to 80%. So we decided against it. Finally, somebody recommended that why don't you go and see Sanathan Rath? He's known to cure people which other doctors are generally not able to cure, or they find different methods of curing people. So they went to Sanathan Rath, and he was one of the surgeons, the only surgeon I would say, who said that no requirement of surgery. These are the few medications that you gotta take, and then I'm gonna see you in 3 months of time. So as the saying goes, right, the best surgeons are the one who treat the patients without incising the skin. So if you don't have to perform the surgery and you treat the patient, those are the best surgeons. That was the inspiration that I actually drew from him, that if you can treat a patient without giving a surgery with a mortality of more than 75 to 80%, then why not to take that route? So I always knew that I always wanted to become a surgeon. At that moment of time, I always wanted to become a neurosurgeon so that I can treat some people who are similar to my grandma, suffering from similar issues, rather than operating and giving a mortality rate to the family of 75 to 80%, and starting with a treatment which is less invasive and then going forward from there, which I think is quite lost in India. They start with invasive thing first and then they think about going back to medicine. This is what I've seen. I'm not saying all the doctors or all the hospitals perform this, but a lot of people, they still do this fashion. And that's where the inspiration came from. So from the very beginning, I knew the moment I entered medicine, I knew that I'm going to be a surgeon. Never thought otherwise.
It's quite an inspiring story, and it hits like a little emotional chord in my heart because I am from Orissa. So when I hear someone talking so fondly and so nicely of people there, so I just feel like they're talking about my people. So that felt really nice. Thank you for sharing that story.
I would have never forgotten Dr. Sanathan Rath. Can never forget. He has got stories attached to it. People bringing the limbs to him and he attaching it after 3-4 hours. Usually time is between 1 to 2 hours, because unless you keep it in a box of ice cubes or for the transportation purpose, the patient himself brought the limb, the severed limb, back to him in the clinic, and he did manage to get it back in full function. It was pretty famous. It was pretty famous in those days. 90s, I would say, 80s, 90s time.
Something else that people aren't very much aware of is that every specialty in the UK has a very different pathway in terms of how you apply for it, the application process, the exams and the portfolios and bits and pieces like that. There might be some similarities, but they are quite contrastingly different. I have zero idea, I'm going to be very honest, about how you pursue surgical training, what the application process is, and that is one of the reasons why I never made a video about it, because I think I'm the wrong person to be talking about it. And today I've got the right person to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why I approached you. So, Shawn, the stage is yours. Tell people about what the application process is like, what are the steps that go into it, and how you applied for it and everything surrounding that.
The application to the surgical process is fairly simple and straightforward. So you start by creating an account on Oriel, go through the job profile, download the self-assessment form and see what all criterias do you have the evidence for. Apply and score yourself, apply and upload all the evidences. Then just look into it. But yes, the surgical process is a bit daunting because a lot of things which back home we never even have heard of. We would have not collected evidence of anything at all. We never knew that evidence is so much important in life. And these are some of the very important factors that we miss out as an IMG. But I think I had interviewed with Dr. Raja Adnan, I think a month back. So I've given a fairly good opportunity to understand some simple and basic steps how to go about it, and I think that would be a very interesting video.
I think I'll leave a link down below of that video to watch, so we don't go too much into it if you've already talked about it, so everyone can go and watch that video down below. There is a very silly question, something I get asked quite a lot, which is something I also don't know much about, which is what is the difference between MRCS and FRCS?
That's a very good question. MRCS is, how should I break it? So MRCS is just being a membership of the Royal College of Surgeons, but FRCS is before you become a consultant. Like before you attain a CCT, you have to go for a fellowship and you have to get a FRCS before you can go into a fellowship. That's like the final ending part of your career pathway. So while you're doing your ST8 training in surgery, you have to go through FRCS, get done with it, start doing your fellowship, and then possibly attain a consultant position somewhere in the country.
So how long is the core surgical training for?
2 years.
2 years, and then you do higher training
for 6 years.
For 6 years, and then so you would have done your MRCS all parts in those years.
You know, if you have to move forward from CT2 to ST3, you have to clear both parts of MRCS in between those 2 years, which is a prerequisite for an ST3 training.
Right. Okay. So it's something similar in like psychiatry. We have CT 1, 2, 3, and we need to clear our 3 parts of MRC Psych, which is a prerequisite for applying for higher training. You do that in surgery as well, where you have to clear your 2 parts of MRCS before you apply. But then to come out of your higher training, you said, wherein you have to do the FRCS.
FRCS, yes.
So something that we normally talk on this channel and a lot on my Instagram page is normalizing failures in life and, talking about challenges and things that might not have gone to plan. Did you have any challenges or did you have any roadblocks in your journey, or were there any people who sort of did not support and try to clear you stir from the journey you were pursuing of, say, moving out of India?
There's a huge list of things that I've gone through, Starting from leaving engineering, that was a roadblock. Didn't really knew what has to be done, where you have to go, where the future is going to lead you to, whether you'll be able to clear the 5 years of MBBS. It was all uncertainty. But then I realized that certainty is just the enemy of your growth, and nothing is for sure certain until unless it has happened. And I feel it is still debatable. Even if it has happened, you cannot be certain that it has actually happened. So it's still debatable from my side. So I felt it's fine. There are roadblocks, but you need to steer your way through it somehow. So that was first roadblock through my career. And then when I entered medicine, I was a scholarship holder every year. So I had to make sure that I come in the top 3 rank out of 180 students that we were in a batch to ensure that I keep my scholarship every year. I had to actually graze through a lot of stuffs in order to make sure that I keep my position so that I get scholarship every year. That was something which I feel is very close to my heart, which I did, but there were failures in between it and a lot of people are unaware of it. So when you are abroad, it's not only medicine that counts, but 25% of it also counts that how you do generally behave in your regular routine, or how is your normal everyday routine for the entire year. That 25% is completely in the hands of the professors. There was a professor where I had an argument with him on some discussion in the class, and he made sure that he gives me the least number of marks from those 25% to ensure that I may not get the scholarship back. So I was pretty scared at that point of time, because as I said, I really wanted to be independent at that moment, and I really did not want it to have or provide any burden to my family with respect to finances and other things. That was something which I felt was a roadblock. In terms of failures, I haven't failed any examinations per se, but I did fail my own expectations at times, lost my mind over a lot of things. The most important part of it was when I had to write my OSCE examination for graduation. They just did not allow me to write.
Why?
So I was someone who was teaching juniors all the OSCE tests. So they were of the opinion that I already know the question papers for the examination, which I did not. I think they thought that the juniors are practicing the same scenarios which we were supposed to do on our graduation ceremony day. It was not actually that. So I had to go to the dean of the college to explain her the scenario. I was like, you put me up to teach the students. It was not me who wanted really to teach the students. And I'm pretty sure that if you ask the coordinator of the OSCE examination, they would also tell you that there is nothing similar which is coming through. And yeah, finally I was able to manage.
Wow, so there have been quite a few serious challenges that you've had to overcome.
I think, yeah, it keeps coming. Everything, problems I think is inevitable, but the meaning of each problem is not. So you always gain from all your problems. You gain all from your roadblocks. One of them, again, a major roadblock was PLAB 2 scenario, where we came to give PLAB 2 and we got stuck over the pandemic. While we were stuck over the pandemic, it was an uncertainty when the examination is going to happen. There were some rumors about changing of the pattern, which we were not prepared for. But yeah, eventually that happened as well.
So were you stuck throughout the first wave here in the UK?
Yes,
Oh my goodness, I wasn't aware of that. And how did you manage? Whereabout did you put up and how did you get through it then?
In the UK at that moment of time, I think there were more than 150 people from around the globe who were stuck in the UK, who just could not go back to their home countries. So Bobby organization was the one who kind of liaised with us, liaised with GMC, and were very, very good in terms of providing us the seats as the first opportunity available for PLAB 2. They have been tremendous tremendously available for us every single time. They used to conduct webinar sessions so that the morale of the students don't go down. We are away from family. There were issues with fundings. They've funded half of the accommodation for a lot of people in Manchester. Couldn't thank them enough, actually, to be honest, at that moment of time. They were the only support which all the candidates had, irrespective. Although they are from the, Indian origin, the organization is an Indian origin, but they went out and to help everybody. It doesn't matter from which country background they are from. Just commendable, I would say.
That's very nice to have someone at least to look out for you. I kind of take away from this entire conversation this one phrase that you said, that certainty is the enemy of growth. But this sort of uncertainty is quite a lot to deal with during the first phase of pandemic. Say, for example, you did not move out of India post your MBBS and you went on to pursue your PG in India. What do you think you wouldn't have been able to accomplish, or what would have been different if you stayed back?
So the situation is that I've already got into a surgical training in India, or have I not yet?
Interesting. Say you have gotten through, let's be positive. You've gotten through surgical training in India, and now you've gotten through here, you worked here for a few years. What do you think if you would have pursued the pathway there, would you have not been able to accomplish? Or what would have been the positives or negatives of being over there to compare to having made the move here?
I think the positive would be a short training period, which is like 3 years and you're done with your surgical training, like the general surgical training, of course, not the specialty training. I think the negative point would be the work-life balance, I would say. The enormous number of hours that you work through without sleeping, constantly working, juggling your life, your work is horrendous. I don't think so I would be able to do that.
We've talked about all the serious stuff, training and everything. Now we're going on to move to the fun bits now. What do you usually enjoy doing in your free time? Whenever you have your weekends to yourself or your days off post your own calls, what does Shawn enjoy doing in his free time?
I love reading books, and you can see tons of textbooks here. Apart from that, I do have small hustle that I do with the name of PLAB to NHS. That's like a journey from PLAB to the NHS and how do you go about it. I make sure that I keep uploading few things over there, make sure that I maintain the website, write few blogs over there, make sure to put some videos on YouTube, come up with some new ideas, pitch up to people. Like I'm trying to reel in Dr. Raja Adnan here with one of the project that I had pitched him long back, but due to core surgical training and its commitments, I had stopped in midway. But I'm going to continue from next month, actually entering into training, and then I know that I would have some time for myself. You asked me one question, going back to your previous question, that how did I manage while I was in the pandemic? So I had a company, I made up a company at that moment of time. So I started teaching free sessions to PLAB 1 candidates. And in one of those sessions because at that time, I think only 100 people could join you. So it was full session, 100 people joined. It was a cardiology session that I was taking. And at the end of the session, a lot of people told me that, why don't you take other subjects as well? I was like, I'm just doing it for fun, keep myself motivated rather than starting to get all of them. They're like, it's fine. We can all pay you a small sum of money and you can just do all of this together. So at that moment of time, I did not really think about it. A few days later, I thought that I have to manage my finances myself. Did not come over here with a lot of finances, thinking that I'm going to spend here for 5-6 months with the rent, which is very high in Manchester. Not much more than London, but it's still very high. For one room, I think we used to pay £540 in a 6-bedroom apartment. I had to manage those finances. So I told the entire cohort people that what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some mocks for you guys and you can pay me only for the mocks. So I did make some mocks, but there were still few people who were quite asking me to make sure that I do teach them few of the sessions over video, like a normal webinar. So I told, fine, I would do that. So I did that. And then I had an entire thought for an entire month where I took those sessions for 19-20 subjects, the most important subjects that PLAB 1 entails. And then I thought, why not to make it a little bigger? So I formed a small, won't say a company, but a small handle called PLAB Nation at that time. Started posting questions, people got aware of it, then gave a free mock where 370 odd people attended the mock just before the examination. So it was growing in momentum, but due to personal circumstances, I had to sell that company to Plabable. Took over that company, PLAB Nation, and currently I'm affiliated with them, taking their webinars on their platform.
Oh wow, interesting. So this has been quite a steep learning curve about you and your entire journey, and this is so inspiring for me to hear, because I mean, I am not as big as you are in terms of helping out people, but in whatever little possible way I can. So this is so inspiring for me to hear that you've been doing so much and I had zero idea. So I feel like a fangirl right now meeting you, because the moment you said Plabable, I'm like, oh my goodness. You spoke about you have a few projects that you're planning. Obviously, you're going to start core surgical training in August, which is going to be a full-on, full-time job in itself. Other than those bits, what's next for you in terms of, do you have any like set goals or any ideas or things that you want to pursue, whether at work or outside of work?
I want to learn something really crazy, inspired by my colleague from engineering. His name is Akash. He's a traveler enthusiast. He's an influencer. He goes by the name Wander with Sky on Instagram, and he recently went to Portugal to get some skydiving lessons, which has been on my bucket list since a long time. Not skydiving with the trainer, but an individual skydiving. So this is something which I am really fascinated about. It might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but 1 year for sure. But this is definitely in my bucket list, which I really want to cut this off.
I hope that works out, and I hope I see, the outcome of it on your social media page. Yeah, fingers crossed. This is the last of all the questions before we move on to the actual fun bit. I keep saying that, but yeah, I promise this is the last one. Having had this long chat, the $1 million question, which is mapping out the move of moving out of your home country. Is it all worth it?
I would say yes, it's all worth it at the end. Because at the end of the day, when I'm just lying down, looking at my own journey, I cannot tell about everyone else because circumstances are different for everyone. For some people, it might not be good enough. For some people, it will be okay, and for some people it will be very good. For me, I would say if I just sit back, relax with a cup of tea in my hand or a coffee, and I look back through the challenges that I've come through and imagining myself 10 years ahead of it in the UK, I would say it's all worth it.
So Shawn, we finished all the serious bits of it in true Bollywood style, because I'm a big Bollywood fan. So I've got like a set of questions that I want to ask you. They are in, again, true Kejo style, rapid fire questions. They're going to be rapid and you need to make sure they're full of fire whenever you answer back. And they aren't very controversial questions. They are more so cerebral and deep. So whenever you're ready, I'm going to fire these questions at you.
Sounds scary to me, actually.
No, I promise it'll be fun. I promise.
Let's go for it.
Okay. So the first one is, which specialty did you set out to specialize in when you started medical school?
Oh, neurosurgery.
Okay, I sort of now know the answers because I've had this long chat. Which country sits on top of your bucket list to travel?
Oh, Philippines.
If you could play a character in a movie or TV series, who would you be?
Spider-Man.
Alright. Which Spider-Man though? Do you have a preference?
No preference as such. Just want to be casted in Spider-Man movie.
Alright, okay. What does a free or off day in Shawn's life look like?
Being in bed most of the times with my phones and gadgets.
If you could recommend one book, you've said that you've got a lot of books in the backdrop and you love reading books. So which book would you recommend that I must read?
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
It's been on my list for so many years. Okay, I need to get hold of it. Okay. If you were a product, what would your tagline be?
Saare jahan se acha.
What?
Saare jahan se acha. I'm a product, I should be the best, right?
Okay, now I get it. I thought that why are you singing the song? Okay, fine, makes sense now. I was like, why are you being patriotic suddenly?
Okay.
Fine, makes sense. Oh, I shouldn't be talking so much. Okay. When you were younger, whose poster would I find on your walls?
Oh, Harry Potter.
Oh, really? Oh, you're a Potterhead like me. Yay. Okay. Which TV series are you currently watching?
Law School, a Korean series.
I'm going to list 5 things and you need to rank the following in order of your preference. Job satisfaction, active social life, financial independence, healthy mind and body, supportive partner.
Oh, wow. Okay. Supportive partner, that's the first. Having a financial stability, that's the second. Job satisfaction, I think then is the mental peace. And what's the last one? Active social life. I don't care.
All right. React to the following in one word. Productivity.
Half an hour, making sure that you get the job done.
All right. Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, the best in the UK.
Social media.
The more you have, the less it is.
One final question. If you weren't a doctor, what do you think you would be doing? If you weren't an engineer either, I have to phrase that for you as well. So if you weren't a doctor or an engineer, what do you think you would be doing?
Pilot.
Oh, wow. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of Mapped Out with Monisha. And thank you so much, Shawn, for taking the time out. Any final words that you have got to say to anyone?
So first of all, thank you, Monisha, for having me. It's been a great pleasure to be on your show. The only piece of advice that I do have is, it's related because I have been through a lot and I have a lot of obstacles that I've overcome. I think some of the most difficult and stressful moments of our lives also end up being the most formative and the motivating in future. And that is what we need to take from every obstacle or a roadblock that we come across, to make sure that we derive some meaning to it and we give it a new direction to move forward.
Very wisely said, Shawn. Thank you so much. And I'm going to leave down below all the links for Shawn's social media pages and the interview he's done with Dr. Raja Adnan Ahmed and PLAB to NHS as well. So I'm going to leave all those links down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, then please do subscribe. So bye to everyone. Bye. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, so this brings us to the end of today's episode of Mapped Out with Monisha. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. It's been quite eye-opening for me, at least. If you have any other recommendations of who I should be reaching out to basically feature them in this podcast of mine, video podcast of mine, then do drop it down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, then you know the drill. And comment down below which was your favorite part, or if you have any questions you want to ask Shawn, and maybe I will compile all of them and send it to him. And look after yourself and your loved ones and take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Mwah.